Boyle Heights, there was a war between humans and vampires, but all this is over because many years ago they made a truce to keep the peace between both sides as long as the vampires comply with their 3 rules. Don't let humans know they exist. Don't feed on the unwilling and never enter Boyle Height without permission, and the common people began to think vampires were a legend while they became richer and more powerful. Now we meet Jay, whose family participated in the war against vampires a long time ago. But now his life is quiet, and he goes to pick up his girlfriend Maria, but when they're going home he realized that one of the vampires named Victor entered Boyle Height without asking permission, and on top of that, when he goes to tell the rest of his group about it, he finds out that 3 of his friends are dead, and on top of that, at that moment Jay hears his girlfriend screaming, and when he comes out it looks like one of the vampires kidnapped her. Now we meet the other main character in the movie named Benny, who's Jay's brother. But his life is a bit more boring. Instead of chasing vampires, he spends his time sleeping in college. The girls laugh at him. He has no money, and he lives with his grandmother. Oh, and he also makes music, but can't bring himself to play it in public. At one point his brother appears a bit worried about the whole girlfriend thing, tells Benny that he has to do something tonight, and because of that he won't be able to work as a driver, and since Benny doesn't have a dime he offers to cover him for the whole night, and even though at first Jay says no, he ends up saying yes, with the only condition that if someone asks his name he must pretend to be Jay, since all the papers of the car in his name. So now he gives him all the instructions, and Benny goes to look for the client in a Beverly Hills mansion, and that's where the other 2 characters in this movie show up, this girl named Blair and her friend named Zoe. And even though Benny has his fly down, he doesn't know how to open the door of the truck, and Zoe says he doesn't look like a chauffeur. He has to take them to 5 parties all night long until they get to the last one before dawn. During the trip the 2 girls propose a couple of interesting games. Mary Kay, me Blair, your abuela, what would you do if you knew tonight was your last night on Earth? But Benny's kind of stupid and tells them he's just a quiet boy who lives with his grandmother. At the end they get to the first party. The girls put on some masks and come in showing what looks like some kind of jewelry with a mark on it somewhere else. Jay meets with his gang and says that after 3 generations he's going to be the one in charge of breaking the truce because the vampires took his girlfriend Maria, and that they're responsible for all this is the vampire of the car named Victor. While Benny is waiting for the girls, he hears a scream in a house, and when he goes down to see he finds one of these gems. But for now this doesn't matter because the 2 girls show up to go to the next party on the trip. They offer him some drinks, but Benny says no. And so they end up arriving at the second party, but one of the girls leaves the phone inside the car, and there Benny sees a strange message where Victor asks how he is, and even though he tries to call his brother to tell him there's something wrong, Jay doesn't answer his phone, and on top of that he checks their bag and discovers that it's full of bills covered in blood, and since the police show up I guess this scares him. And he gets out of the car to enter the place where the 2 girls went to, a place where it looks like a hotel, and the receptionist asks him what he needs. But he's a bit nervous, and she's about to throw him out when he shows her the jewelry he found a few minutes before, and with that she starts treating him super nice to the point that she asks him if he's meeting anyone upstairs. He names Zoe and Blair, and the woman escorts him to the elevator, but before leaving she says something weird, then please drink responsibly, because finally when he enters the room he finds the 2 girls sucking the blood of 2 guys, and I guess that's when he realized that the 2 of them are actually vampires. The important thing is that there he confesses that he's actually Jay's brother and that his real name is Benny, but there Zoe says that he can be useful to take them to his brother, so he's still going to be their driver. Oh, and after that we learn that one of the guys is dead. At that point the other guy who's still alive tells them that the bosses are going to burn them alive for doing what they're doing, and they're breaking the truce, but they don't care much about it because they end up killing him too. At this point Benny takes advantage of the moment to escape and tell everything that happened to the cop, but it turns out that the policeman was aware of everything that happened in that hotel and is about to put him in the trunk. But that's when the girls show up, tell the cop that they didn't really kill anyone, but just suck some blood out of them, so he frees Benny. And then they break his phone so he won't call his brother, and while Benny tries to escape a couple of times, Victor goes to the house of 2 women who are apparently his vampire bosses. After talking for a while they tell him they're going to kill him for drinking out of bounds and for violating the truce, but Victor's angry because for years they told them how and where to feed, and that's why he decided to start a war against humans. And although they think Victor will be gone for a couple of years, he says he's not going anywhere because his girls are down there right now ripping their entire network upon one neck at a time, and now everything they see belongs to him because when they want to call in security, he shows them that he killed him. At this point, Blair tells Benny to calm down and explains to all of us a little bit about the plot of this movie because we don't understand a damn thing. Apparently, there are 5 bosses who control Los Angeles. Zoe and Victor are together, and she's friends with Zoe. And they're in the business of handling money from various businesses and blood clubs. But Victor is tired of not having power, so that night he's going to eliminate all 5 bosses, and the last part of the plan was to take Jay to him at the end of the night. After that, Victor calls his girl to tell her that he just killed the 2 bosses, and finally when Zoe tells them that they made a mistake and that they actually have Jay's brother, Victor says no problem because they can use him to catch his brother. Meanwhile, Jay and his gang go looking for one of those 5 bosses named Gio to then find Victor, but it turns out that Gio was the owner of the house of the first party the girls went to, and they killed a lot of people there. At that moment they find Gio dying, and they ask him about Victor. He tells them that he's going after all the bosses, and the ones who did all these were his girls, and in the end he wants to suck their blood, so they end up killing him too. After that, the 3 protagonists go to the 3rd place, but they realize they can't leave Benny alone because he's gonna escape, so they'll have to go with them. There the 2 of them go in, but Benny meets some college friends who bully him because he's dressed as a driver, but Blair shows up to kiss him in front of them. Finally they enter the club, and the ones who also enter through the back door are Jay and his gang. The girls go look for a guy named Big Lou's, the 4th boss, but apparently this guy has already been killed by these other guys who belong to the Night Legion, which is a group of people who hate vampires and go around Los Angeles killing every vampire they come across. Then a bunch more of this group come in, and it looks like they're going to kill them, but then Benny shows up to save his 2 new friends. In the end, the girls kill these 3 guys, and I guess the last one didn't die because he only gets kicked, so the kill count is still that. After that, the 3 of them leave, and there they cross paths with Jay's group, but when he goes to look for Benny they find other vampires, and they start to fight. The fight lasts 2 seconds though, and I don't think anyone else dies because the 3 main characters escape, and the rest go out to shoot them with some crossbows. Later, Jay meets another group that hunts vampires, and they offer him to join, but he doesn't want to go for now, and I guess the only reason for the scene is in case there's a sequel. At this point, Benny takes the 2 girls to hide at his house, and even though they're told to keep it quiet, as soon as they get inside, his annoying grandma shows up, and on top of that, Blair seems to like Benny. But the nosy grandma won't stop talking, and I don't know why she doesn't go to sleep, for God's sake. Luckily, she then goes to sleep. Benny grabs a couple of knives, and in one moment the 2 of them go to talk in his room. There, Blair tells them that she met her friend in the 70s, and since her life wasn't the best, she turned her into a vampire, and when they're bound to kiss, Zoe appears to tell them that they must leave, and even though Blair wants Benny to stay, Zoe forces him to go with them. While all this was going on, Jay and his friends crossed paths with the cop from the beginning who tells him that Victor wants to see them, and meanwhile Victor is with a guy who I have no idea who he is, and who I guess didn't die. If anyone knows who he is, written it in the comments. Later, Jay finally gets to talk to Victor and asks him about his girlfriend and his brother, but he tells them he's not going to free anyone anyway. Victor doesn't die because he's a vampire and can regenerate, and what we find out is that Jay's girlfriend is dead because right there Victor tells him the meat he's eating is actually Maria. Meanwhile, the 3 go to look for the last boss, that is this weird vampire named Rocco. There he stays talking to Zoe, and the other 2 go out to talk in the backyard. She tells them that her only family's Zoe, and he also tells her a couple of things that nobody cares about. The only thing that matters is that she tells him she's not going to kill him, and they start kissing. Meanwhile, Zoe is about to kill Rocco, but he's already realized everything. The rest of his gang shows up, and they start to fight, but at one point while they're escaping, the vampire hunters show up and shoot Zoe with an arrow. Morocco's vampire friends also appear, and they all start fighting, and while they escape, we can see from the scene it seems that at least 6 guys from the Night Legion died. A while later, Zoe is dying, and they need to get to the last place, but it's Victor's house, and Blair tells him he must leave if he wants to survive, and when he's about to escape he realizes that his brother's inside, grabs a bat, and enters the house. In one of these capsules he finds his brother Jay, But he apparently can't see him, so with the bat he goes to break the glass, but right then Victor appears, and even though he tries to stab the villain, Victor stops him without problems, and when they're about to drink all his blood, Blair says to stop, but there's Zoe tells her that she created her. And finally she stabs her friend, but at that moment Benny starts the car that makes him break the glass of the house, and so Zoe dies from the sunlight. After that Jay appears, but it was actually a trap because there appears Victor. And he bites her protagonist, but just at that moment Blair appears, stabs Victor, and now Jay pushes him into the sunlight to kill him. After that Blair gives some blood to her boyfriend, and finally they both survive. The next day Jay is sad about the death of his girlfriend, and Benny, I guess, is in the process of becoming a vampire. But the important thing is that at night the two brothers talk about everything that happened, and Jay tells him that from now on the whole world changed, the war started, and he will have to choose between one of the two sides. Oh, and finally Benny leaves him a bag with a lot of money as a gift anyway. Now Benny is a vampire. He starts to be hungry for human blood, and he wants to eat his college friends who ask him what happened to him the night at the club, but he doesn't tell them anything, and instead he drives off with his new vampire girlfriend.